Forbidden City in Beijing was an ancient palace whose very name inspired awe and fear. Its nearly 10,000 rooms were built for one man, the Emperor of China. Only he could give permission to enter its inner precincts. He had absolute power over the life and death of his subjects. Until the 20th century, the Forbidden City was one of the most secret places on Earth. In the past, people who trespassed paid with their lives. But today, the price of an entrance ticket is cheaper, and 8 million visitors a year walk where once only emperors trod. As the 600th anniversary of its construction approaches, an ambitious restoration project is attempting to turn back the clock and return the palace to its former glory. The renovation has solved some old mysteries and uncovered some new ones. Today, the Forbidden City is China's biggest tourist attraction, but it almost didn't survive at all. Construction of the Forbidden City started in 1407. It took 14 years to complete. At the time in Europe, Joan of Arc was still in pigtails. Constantinople was the Christian capital of the Roman Empire. And in Iceland, dried fish were used as money. The Forbidden City was more than a city. In fact, it was bigger than the world's smallest country. 55 Buckingham Palaces or 100 football pitches could fit inside its walls. It's the biggest palace complex on the planet. For 500 years, it was the heart of the Chinese Empire, the seat of its government and the home of its emperor. But by the 20th century, the Forbidden City and everything it represented, its buildings, the palace contents, and even the emperor himself, was under attack. Some wouldn't survive. The Forbidden City was a city of walls, high walls that separated it from the rest of Beijing. The most that ordinary Chinese people saw of the Forbidden City was a few roofs that peeked over the top. In the 17th century, they would also have heard strange noises coming from within the walls. The Chinese emperor of the time had discovered Western music. He commanded that any foreigners who could play a musical instrument perform for him. Their concert lasted for 4 hours. When it was over, the emperor ordered students, including 2 princes, to learn to play the Western instruments. This song was written for the emperor. The musicians were able to enter where ordinary Chinese people could not. The high walls around the Forbidden City kept the ordinary people out, but they also kept the emperor shut in, isolated and unapproachable. In imperial China, the emperor, as the son of heaven, was too exalted to be seen by the common people. The palace was a physical barrier that kept him separated from the public. Commoners rarely saw the emperor, and if they did, it was from afar. The imperial system lasted for thousands of years, but as the 20th century dawned, it was on the verge of collapse. Puyi, the last emperor, lived in the Forbidden City from 1908 to 1924. For most of that time, he was a virtual prisoner there, having limited contact with the world outside the walls. His isolation would have been absolute, but for the introduction of a telephone. Puyi had the telephone installed despite the objections of his advisors and the fact that it overturned thousands of years of court etiquette. It meant that for the first time in history, commoners would be able to speak to the emperor. His advisors were horrified at the prospect.
My teachers tried to talk me out of getting a telephone installed, saying if a telephone was installed, anybody could talk to the emperor, which was unprecedented. I persisted and told them to get me one.
When he got the telephone, he didn't feel like a bird in a cage anymore, so he made as many calls as possible.
The telephone helped to alleviate the last emperor's sense of isolation. But it was another invention that first opened the walls to the West. The first mechanical clock entered the Forbidden City in 1601. It was brought by a Jesuit priest, Matteo Ricci, as a gift for the emperor. Ricci was a missionary who wanted to use the emperor to spread Christianity. The emperor wasn't interested in meeting Ricci, but he was interested in Ricci's clock. In fact, later emperors became so obsessed with clocks that they set up a clock-making department within the Forbidden City itself. And its creations do more than just tell the time. The emperors became avid collectors of clocks. Ricci's was the first of a collection of nearly 200 that are now exhibited in the Palace Museum. They're displayed in the Hall of Ancestors. In ancient times, this was where the emperor performed sacred rites at the ancestral shrine. But today the hall is filled not with clouds of burning incense, but with the ticking of clocks. The largest clock in the collection is a mechanical marvel that stands more than 2 meters tall. The clock with the writing man is just one of the million treasures in the palace collections. Today, tourists come from around the world to admire the treasures of the Forbidden City. But they were almost destroyed. A plum ripe for picking, the palace was under frequent attack. In
Although Chiang Kai-shek took some of the cultural relics to Taiwan, the new government was determined to restore the Palace Museum as the greatest treasure house of art in China.
The communist victory in 1949 ushered in a period of change in China and reversed the fortunes of the Palace Museum. With the artifacts safe, it was now time to save the buildings. In 1949, the Forbidden City was in a terrible state. Would time and neglect lead to its final destruction? Has almost 1.5 million artifacts in its collection. Sometimes they even make the television news.
被中国北京故宫博物院以1800万元人民币买走，开创了中国画在国内拍卖的最高价位。
The collection continues to grow as the Chinese. All cultural relics, including the art collections, court utensils, and historical documents, will be sorted and recorded using the most advanced information technologies. These treasures represent the essence of thousands of years of Chinese art, long hidden from mortal sight. They are now being brought into the light. Like the palace itself, they are forbidden no longer.